One of my favorite investigators was this girl named Abby. I loved Abby because she was my age. She was 23, 22, 23, and she just was awesome. That was one of the kind of dreams I had when I left on my mission, actually, was I wanted to teach and hopefully baptize someone who I connected with, who was close to me, and who I could really see the difference that the gospel made in her life. And Abby had grown up, she lived in Maine, and she'd grown up in a good family, but she had made some really bad decisions for a lot of her life. And when I met her, she had just gotten out of a rehab, and she just was really dedicated to turning her life around and, you know, becoming the kind of person that she wanted to be. And the sisters had only taught her one lesson. She knew her dad's best friend was a member of the ward, and he had invited her to church one day. And I wasn't there for this, but the first time that she went to church, it was a fast testimony meeting, and she stood up and went and bore her testimony, and she knew nothing about God, really, and she knew that she didn't know anything, but she said essentially, like, I feel good here and I want to know more. And so when I went, we started teaching her, and Abby was amazing because she read the Book of Mormon so much. She loved the Book of Mormon. In the 6 months that I served in that ward, she got baptized about 2 months after I got there, and she read the Book of Mormon at least twice, I think maybe 3 times, and she was almost done with the Doctrine and Covenants when I left. And so she just loved to read it, and I think that's why she gained her testimony so fast, was because she didn't know anything about God, she didn't know anything about Christ, but she loved reading and learning about it. And so that was how she developed her relationship with them, was by reading and kind of understanding who he was through the Book of Mormon. She quit smoking in 2 weeks so that she could get baptized. She lost a lot of her friends when she decided to get baptized, because they wanted her to keep partying and doing all that stuff with them, and she didn't want to. She wanted to change her life. She had a couple kids, and she wanted to raise them better and give them kind of a better life than she had. And it was just amazing to see the difference that happened to her in the time when I first got there, and she was still a little kind of rough around the edges, to when I left, and she would come teaching with us and would bear solid testimony every time, and she just was so awesome. Another lady who we taught, who I loved, her name was Nancy, and she was the first person actually who I met. She was this older lady. She lived alone, and the sisters had kind of ran into her by chance. They'd visited a less active who lived by her and knocked on her door. She said she wasn't interested, and they decided to shovel her driveway for her because it just snowed. And she saw them shoveling it and realized that she thought they were Jehovah's Witnesses, and she realized that they weren't, so she invited them in for food. She invited them in for cake or something, and they found out then that her aunt and her uncle had been ward members in the ward, and they had just passed away a couple years earlier, and they had no idea. And so she knew a lot about the church from her aunt and her uncle, and so they started teaching her then. And so I taught her for the 3 months that I was there. And Nancy was, I love Nancy, but she was one of the most frustrating people I taught, because she was very much wanted to take her time. It took about a year before she was baptized, but she was so solid in doing it, and she knew a lot of the ward members. She was definitely someone where fellowshipping with the ward helped a lot, because otherwise she took a long time to go to church, and she only went because her friends in the ward had invited her. But she's just has been very solid in it since then, and it's proof that even if people don't agree to get baptized in the first 3 lessons, they still may get baptized later on. It just takes a little bit longer for some people than others.